Good evening, everyone. Oh, and there comes an email immediately as I start the stream. Off to a great start. Just close all that down. At least I remember to set myself to do not disturb on Discord this time, so we shouldn't have any unwanted pings. Thanks, Scott. All good here. And thank you, Zarya Galaxy. I missed you too. So, as usual, I'll go over what I've been up to since the last stream, which seems like it was yesterday. Time is just absolutely whizzing by at the moment. So I have been fleshing out the selection and the refinements of what things should exist within a sector. Essentially, this is the background state. Initially, I started off with this being... where are we? It's under here somewhere. So initially, this was the political state. And now, it's more of a background state. It kind of goes beyond a political state, and it's more an overriding set of scenario, essentially, for that particular sector in the galaxy. It's quite complicated and quite confusing, and I've had to do a bit, sort of roll that back, try it slightly differently, roll that back, but I think we're getting there now. So essentially, and this is one of the big problems, has been managing the data, because it's a nested data structure, and I've tried using structs and that didn't really work, because the output you get at the end of it, you never quite know which enum that's going to relate to, so it was difficult to predict in advance what the output was going to look like. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm using as a whole wide array of different enums, and we're using those to drill down in more and more detail until we get a really specific background state for the sector, and then that will be communicated to the game via a string, and then that string will be referenced by the star system to essentially drive what it is it's generating. That's the system in a nutshell. But as you can see, if we follow through this one, so I thought I'd go with a simple one first, and it's turning out not to be quite so simple. So intergalactic space, first of all, we do a range check. So this is essentially the outer edge of the galactic halo, beyond which you are in intergalactic space. And then from there to 1,000,000 light years, we go from 0.01% down to 0.001% chance of there being something. And this is something in terms of a civilization object. So something related to a species that has FTL. So assuming we get a true value on this, we then do a bit of a dice roll to decide what that object is, or rather the type. So either there's nothing at all, or it's a historic civilization, so a civilization or object that was there and now isn't, or it's currently active. And then we do some more dice rolls to decide whether or not it's a vessel, an outpost, or something else, which I'll add. So things like probes or anything else we can think of. And then we further refine that, so following the chain along, if it's a vessel, then what type of vessel? Is it civilian? Is it religious vessel? Industrial, science, military, etc.? Then we further refine that based on what class of object it is. So if it's a civilian vessel, is it a colony ship? Is it a transport? Is it a recreational craft? So we just keep refining and refining and refining until we figure out exactly what it is that we're making in that sector. So it could be, I mean, this is going to get extremely big, probably quite quickly. But that's what we want. You know, we want it to be varied. Aside from doing that and scratching my head a lot, the other thing we've been working on, if I just grab my Discord a minute. So Automash, who has been helping loads, and Udai, who's up here somewhere, Udai. These guys have been helping to extract all the data from the Gaia dataset, as well as a couple of others. And what we're doing with this is we're going to essentially take a snapshot of a 2,000 light year radius around Sol, and that's going to be our real world stars range within the game, at least our initial real world stars range. I've lost the tab I was on. There it is. Which gives us, depending on which data set you look at, around about 67 million real world stars within the game, which is a lot, obviously. The way we were going to do this is we were going to have a sector file for each individual sector. So if you think of the sectors as chunks that are being generated as you fly around, if each one of those had its own data table, then we could simply pull in the stars that we need. But with a 2,000 light year radius, which corresponds to 20 sectors, so a radius of 20 sectors is actually, in a sphere, 33,000 sectors, which is mental. A radius of 20 is a spherical volume of 33,000, which is mind-blowing, which is a lot of CSV files. So instead, what we're going to do is import all of the data en masse into an SQLite database instead, and then pull from there. Mr. Boyan, as far as I'm aware, or as far as I remember, I believe Elite Dangerous has 150,000 real-world stars, and we'll have something in the region of about 50 to 60 million. So quite a bit more. But I don't think the same data sets were available when Elite Dangerous was first made. Not sure if Gaia had even been released back then. What was that, 10 years ago? Quite recall. But the challenge we've got at the moment is making sure we have all of the relevant data, because as Automash was explaining to me, you have different scientific communities accessing different instruments on the Gaia satellite at different times. So whilst you might have one team looking at one thing using one instrument, you've got another team looking at something else using a different instrument, that creates holes in the data because you don't have the full suite of instruments looking at each star every single time. So the data has a lot of holes that we have to sort of backfill, either by working it out mathematically, or by using lookup tables, or cross-referencing with other data sources. But there's a lot of work to do to clean up this data. But hopefully, if all goes to plan, we should be able to put in a 2,000 light year radius of real stars all at once, rather than having to go sector by sector. So fingers crossed that will go swimmingly, and we'll have a huge number of real world stars within the game, which is quite exciting. Even more exciting if we can put stuff on them. So on that note, let's continue with what I was doing here today. I keep having to condense this into macros because it keeps getting more and more and more complicated. So then I'll condense it to a macro, and then it grows even more again. So when I originally started doing this, I wasn't doing it based on the location of the galaxy, and since switching to that, it's giving you more control over the sorts of things you can expect to see. So given that we are talking about intergalactic space here, what are the chances of there being a recreational vessel out there? It's practically zero. I mean, a colony ship, a colony ship heading off maybe to a different galaxy, that's the sort of thing you might expect to find in intergalactic space. The other things are probably things that went amiss somewhere and ended up there by mistake. Plus, this is, if we follow the tree, we are going off of the historic branch, so these are things which are dead in space. Hi Spearmint Magpie, it's going good, thank you. I'm currently working on the galaxy side of things though. Yeah, so this one here, for example, this would be a dead generation ship. So all we do is we take a copy of our random stream. So we've got 0, 1 and 2 that correspond to the bytes here. So we can say there's perhaps a 90% chance that if there is something outside of the galaxy, it's going to be a colony ship. And then maybe a 5% chance each for transports or recreational. Like recreational could just be some joyrider that's gone off and something's gone wrong and they've ended up FTLing out way beyond the ability to get home, and they've just died in the cold depths of space and are just drifting there waiting for you to discover them. So the other thing that we need to define here is also whether or not they're within a system or whether or not they're between systems just floating around in the depths of space. So really that could do with being another enum. Potentially, I mean, we could just do a random bool on that, couldn't we? Random ball from stream. I think we might have gone down the daisy chain enough that we can start assigning that. So let's move some of this out. So one of the challenges with this is because we're doing this inside a macro, and I keep debating whether or not really this should be a function with its own local variables, but keep going down the macro route for now. We need to come up with unique strings to define the option. And the reason that we need to do this via a string is because when we output the background state of the sector, it could be coming from any one of these different enums, and then when we actually get to generating the sector itself and all the stuff within it, we won't know which enum we're referencing, so we can't do a switch on enum because we don't know which enum we're switching on. Whereas if we do it as a string, we can do a switch on a string and then know exactly what we're referencing. DZ006. No, the galaxy and its contents will be the same for everybody. As we are using, in this particular instance, so the actual sector ID itself, which is essentially its XYZ coordinates divided by 100. That defines the sector seed, which is obviously the same for all players. And then down here, we're defining a seed for the background state. So again, this seed is driven by the coordinates plus an affix, and obviously those coordinates are going to be the same for every player, which means the seed's going to be the same for every player. So when we use that particular random stream here, it's going to generate the same output regardless of who's doing the output. So it should be the same for everybody at all times. Okay, so if we do civilization object, it's a vessel and it's historic, and then it's in system. Anasi, yeah. So because everything has a unique seed, that actually makes it easier, because we can use that seed as a reference point. And as you explore the galaxy and reveal civilizations and ships and things, we can keep appending those seeds to a list as part of the save file, and then we can query that back. So you can then browse through previously discovered cultures and objects simply by looking at the seeds that you've already discovered. Yeah, so linking that to tactical data is probably quite far down the development line, but theoretically, yes. Once you've discovered an alien vessel and you've learned where its weak points are, or for example, you've discovered which energy source happens to be the engines or the shields, then assuming that it is then saved as part of your data aboard the ship, then every time you encounter the same vessel again, the same type of vessel, you'll already know where the engines are, which power source is powering the engines. I'm missing an important bit of information here. So it's a historic object, it's a vessel, it's a colony ship, and it's inside a system. Or same thing, and it's outside of a system. Or more accurately, it's in space. That should be reasonably unique. So it's a civilization object, it's historic, it's a vessel, it's a colony ship, and it's in system. Okay. Which means this one would be a transport. single space. Too many S's. Ishtar, does that mean every time I start a new game, all objects, every colony, station, alien vessels are in the same place? Yes, it does mean that. And that was a debate we had as to whether or not we wanted a seeded galaxy that could be changed, or a seeded galaxy that was the same for all players. And we went down the road of we want the galaxy to be the same for everybody, because then the community can explore and map that galaxy as a community, which is something that's quite important to us. Obviously, yes, that means that if you decide to start a completely new game, then civilizations you've discovered before will be where you discovered them last time. But I think to put that into perspective, if you look at Elite Dangerous, then less than 1% of their galaxy has been explored by thousands of players playing it every single day, like since, 10 years? And after all that time, with all those players, they've still only explored less than 1%. So there's going to be plenty out there to discover. It's never going to get old. Paul Wilson, when can we expect to get this? So I was talking to Claire about this earlier, and right now we're putting out dev builds every Friday, and I suggested it might be nice to actually change that to I put the dev builds out after each stream. So I'm going to give that a whirl. So assuming that it builds and nothing crazy happens, the idea is that I'll do a stream, and then after the stream I'll go ahead and put a build together and then make that live on the development branch, so anyone watching the stream can then immediately go and update the game and check out what I've just literally been working on. So hopefully that will generally work better than having to wait for every Friday. It also means you get 2 builds a week rather than 1. I just have to be careful not to break things too severely. Yeah, we'll have to see what we can do in terms of adding randomness for replays. The issue with having randomness is keeping the consistency there for the community. So I'll have a think on it and see what could be possible. All these different options have been done. This is going to be utter madness. I've been racking my brains trying to think of a more efficient way of doing this, but I don't think there is. There just isn't a more efficient way of doing it. We need to drill down through all these different sub options, and yeah, just giving it a unique string for each one just seems to be the only way of doing it, because the only alternative to this is to have an enum that contains literally every single option. And then we set that enum on each one. But at the other end, you're still doing the same thing. You're still switching on that. But the benefit of doing it with a string is that if we are generating data for a specific location, if we're using a string and we do a switch on string, then we only need to add the options we're interested in. We can miss out the ones we're not interested in, which could make the data scale a little bit easier to manage. Yeah, so active ships will move around, and the way we're going to have to do this, because there's a whole chicken and egg scenario here. A galaxy is a big space, and it's a tremendous amount of data on the back end. So when we generate a sector, you're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 stars on average. Now, we can't generate 3,000 to 4,000 star systems worth of data, which will include things like the orbits of the planets, or all the planetary details, the atmospheric details, the surfaces. There's a huge amount of data that would have to be generated per star system. And we can't do that for a whole sector all at once, because that's just madness. So we need to know in advance where the FTL capable civilizations are, and what they are, and who they are, and what they might have flying around their sector of space. And that's sort of what I'm doing now. So that's what this is about. So that when you arrive in a sector, you will see ships and things from other species on the sensors. And the only way to put that on the sensors is to generate it before the star systems are generated. And this system here is what tells the galaxy generation that there should be something there. And once those ships are generated, they'll be free to navigate the galactic space on whatever agenda that they've been programmed with. When you leave that sector, or more likely when you're at least 2 sectors away, they will stop moving. So they'll just stop updating, because obviously we can't have an entire galaxy's worth of ships constantly updating. When you return later, they will work out an offset based on how long you were away, and kind of put themselves where they would be had they been continually moving around. So we'll do it that way. So essentially it'll take a snapshot when you leave, compare that snapshot for when you return, and then put those ships in a different location based on how long you've been away. Essentially a patrol, yes, because it could be like you have a trade route, and you've constantly got ships traveling back and forth along a trade route, and if a ship has just left when you leave the sector, then obviously the engine's going to know how fast it was moving and how long it would take to get to its destination, and obviously how long you've been away from that sector will determine where it is when you come back. But it'll be things like that. We can definitely add randomness into it. They don't have to be predefined patrol routes, because once the ship has been spawned, it could completely randomly go wherever it wants to, depending on the logic that we give it. But I would say most of the time it's probably going to be things like trade routes. And of course the other thing with that is that those ships can't leave their sector of space, because that's their generated area. Well, they can. There's nothing preventing them from leaving their sector of space, but it makes it difficult on the return journey. Once that sector is unloaded, they will just disappear. So if their ship is, say, following you across different sectors, then as soon as their sector unloads, the ship following you will vanish. Now, I'm actually getting a warning on YouTube that there's low bandwidth. Is the stream okay for everyone? Yeah, so any ship relating to any galactic civilization is okay. Well, hopefully it will pick up. Okay, come on, stream, you can do it. Yeah, so once a ship has been spawned, that ship is autonomous within its region of space. Generally speaking, we'll want to keep it within its 100 light year cube. So that ship has completely free reign of its 100 light year cube. And it'll have a range as to how far it would follow you. So say you antagonize an alien species and they start chasing you out of their system. They could continue chasing you beyond the edge of their sector to a certain extent. I don't think we'd want to push that more than about 50 light years, because at that point you're running into the point where the sector will unload, and it's nicer to have them give up and turn around than it is to have them just vanish from space. So I suppose talking about randomness again, on that note, if the arrangement of a star system, or indeed a whole sector, is dependent on the clock within the game, then how you find everything and where things are could be very much dependent on when you go there. So player A that goes there, say Tuesday morning, will find a different situation than player B who goes there Friday afternoon, because time-wise the system has progressed. Yep, just checking my bandwidth. I seem to have enough. Everything seems to be okay this side. Looks like it's YouTube playing up their end. Yeah, time's going to definitely be a factor, because at some point planets and things are going to move, and obviously then the stations that are around them are going to move too. And indeed, ships running schedules. Okay, so I think this satisfies go ahead and do the religious ones next. Oh, Claire, you got a good point, actually. It probably was that. So Claire's been hosting a multiplayer game whilst I've been streaming. And of course, if lots of people are on the game, that's a lot of upstream bandwidth. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, now Claire stopped hosting. Hopefully that will improve the stream. Yeah, Ben's just started a new game apparently. Same password, Dan with a capital D. So I'm just trying to think what types of religious vessels could there be? Obviously we've got religious transport, a religious mission of some kind. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. Feel free to shout out suggestions if you can think of anything. So what we're doing at the moment, for anyone that's missed it, is we're working out all the potential object and scenario types as a background flavor for any given sector. So in this instance, we've got historic civilization, i.e. something which is dead and gone. It's a vessel, and the next one we're doing, it's a religious vessel. So like with the civilian ones, we need what types of religious vessels could there possibly be. And then that's what we'll use to determine what it is the game's actually spawning. Yeah, so we got transport or mission. Yeah, so one of the options on there is logistics. Yeah, pilgrimage is probably a better fit than mission, isn't it? It's kind of what it was I was getting at. Scares me how big this is going to get. I'll have to find some way of condensing it down a bit afterwards. The temp will be something different. I suppose you could have a temple ship drifting through space. Let's see if I can group some of these things together to make this more sensible. Yeah, so the things that we are adding on here are kind of broad strokes. So when it comes to really specific things, we'll do that at the time of actual generation. What we're doing here is we're creating those broad strokes. So the game starts by knowing that, for example, in this case, we've got a religious transport. So we know that it's a transport ship, we know that it was religious in nature, and we know that it's dead because we've gone down that tree. So when it comes to generating that, we know what we're starting with, and then we can generate something really specific. Yep, a prison ship, penance, that would come under transport as well. Okay, Max, have a good one. So what's this? So this is... I think those examples again come under transport. Yep, a generation ship would come under colony ship. So again, the overarching broad stroke is it's a colony ship, but when it comes to actually generating it, we'll do some more dice rolls on that to decide what type of colony ship. What would a crusader ship? Would a crusader ship be pilgrimage? I suppose it's a kind of religious military ship, isn't it, really? Yeah, I'm getting some warnings coming up on YouTube saying there's not enough bandwidth. Yeah, medical's got its own category. There's definitely going to be a bit of duplication, but ultimately, I was going to put science, so medical under science. Yeah, again, so we're looking at broad strokes here. So a civilian ship could have guns on it, but broad strokes, it's a civilian transport. So it's about what is the flavour of that vessel. Yeah, things like time capsules, probes, that sort of thing. We've got an other option for that, and I think those sorts of things will fit in there quite nicely. And the reason I separated logistics and industrial is because logistics is very much about transporting of cargo. And yes, a civilian shuttle is technically transporting of cargo, but it's a specific thing. Whereas the industrial is going to be things like mining craft or anything else of an industrial nature. Yeah, like a refinery would come under industrial, definitely. Whereas a hauler would be under logistics. Yeah. I was just thinking whether or not, considering that we're dealing with literally intergalactic space with these options, on what types of things you're likely to find drifting out there. Like these three are very unlikely. So yeah, civilian transports, religious, and science, I think, would be the more likely ones. Yeah, exactly. So I think I would go do this percentage-wise. I think that far out, if we were to say 75%, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe so if we go 12%, just one, so that one. Oh, of course, these are integers, so I can't do 12.5, but that's fine. So 0 and 13, just round it up to 100. Yeah, so we've got 75% chance that it's going to be a science vessel of some kind, and then essentially for the last 25% split between civilian and religious. Again, we're talking about deep space. Right, so this one being religious, switch on vessel types, religious, right to that one. Again, thinking about what possible things religious-wise would be beyond the galaxy. I think temple, definitely, and a pilgrimage. I wouldn't have thought crusaders would be that far out because there'd be nothing there for them to crusade on. Yeah, and it depends on how we're classing transports. I would say if we were going with a like a funeral ship, or some kind of, yeah, I think funeral thing, like some kind of burial ship that's just sent out into deep space. That's definitely the kind of thing you'd expect to find out there. Yeah, so if we go with temple, i.e. tomb ship, and pilgrimage, which is people seeking a better life elsewhere, that would make sense for that type of space. Which means we can get rid of those ones. Let's move this down. We are going to be making heavy use of this. This is going to need a mighty amount of tidying up afterwards. So really, we don't need that one. We just need two options. Copy random bool. Give me a random bool. Yeah, Academy ships is an interesting one because that's kind of educational. So I don't actually need that in this case because there's only two options anyway. Let's just go with 75% for there being a temple, i.e. a funeral ship, and with a further 25% for a pilgrimage of some kind. Yeah, nomadic ships would, I guess that's your colony ship. Yeah, that would very much be covered with the colony ship. And again, either they are active and alive, or it's historic and it's a derelict. So system. Space. This one science. Right, okay, so it means we need another enum. Conversion chips sound terrifying. So here's a question. Do we separate medical from science? Or would medical come under civilian? Yeah, I mean, I assumed that I'd be putting medical under science. Yeah, okay. That was my initial assumption. We could have like transport. Again, so broad strokes, we're saying it's a research vessel. We won't decide what kind of research vessel until we actually generate the object itself. And then we can, really go specific as to what it is researching. So this is enum vessel types science. I don't think this even needs to be randomized because it's going to be a research vessel, isn't it? That far out. Now that would really depend on the civilization. Every alien civilization is going to be different with different types of technology. So you can't. There isn't an overriding. What is medical like? to just do this as a random int, because oh, actually no, I can't, can I? I wanted to retain the fact I'm using the enum so I can see the options, but just if I do a random stream, select all of that. I can do it this way instead. So the first one was temple, and the second one was pilgrimage. There you go. That just sort of preserves the enum so I can see what the options are. So that handles the vessels. So we now need to do the same thing again for outposts. However, I think much of those options are in fact the same. think 2 more outputs in here should cover everything for intergalactic space. Definitely need to find a better way of condensing this. So, outpost. So the options for an outpost are essentially the same as the options for a ship. Obviously, the only difference being it's an outpost. Yeah, of course, these need changing, don't they? So that gives us another enum. So vessel types, we need outpost types. Did I spell wrong? So it's either going to be a settlement, right, habitation's probably better than settlement, isn't it? Stick that one there. Yeah, so the idea of the system here is that we are, again, broad stroking what these things actually are. So in this instance, we've determined that it is a historic object. We've determined that it's an outpost of some kind. We've then drilled down to the fact it's a civilian outpost, and now we're drilling down to the fact it's a habitation, so a colony. So that's enough for the galaxy side of things. So we know that we've got a derelict civilization and a derelict colony. When we generate the derelict colony, then we can deep dive on the specifics for that. Because otherwise, this is going to just get ridiculously huge. And once we know, what it is we're building, we can have a sort of a laser-focused list of potentials. So yes, we've got habitation, recreation. Yeah. This is essentially the galaxy deciding what thing to put there. Yeah, none of this is modelled yet. This is all going to be present as a text description on the sensors for now. Obviously, eventually it will be modelled once we've got the procedural system built for that. But for now, it's just text descriptions. Anasi, that's a good point. Yes, so when we're generating things within a star system, yes, if we've got a black hole, then when generating the black hole and the things within that system, then generating some kind of research outpost would definitely have a higher chance of spawning there near things of interest. Yeah, I think things like that are definitely way off on the distant horizon. Spelled that wrong. Outpost. Yeah, asteroid mining would come under industrial. So because we're dealing with intergalactic space here, we're probably looking predominantly habitation for any kind of colony or outpost. I can't see there being a recreational outpost between galaxies. It's not beyond reason. Maybe we'll give it a very low percentage. Random ball stream. Sorry, that should be random ball with weight for the stream. Yeah, so I reckon 90% it's going to be habitation, maybe even 95%. Then again, we just decide whether or not it's inside a system or outside of a system. And outpost habitation. On. Tidy this up properly off stream. Can't abide messy blueprints. Right. So civilian outpost is going to be either a habitation 95% of the time, or recreation a further 5% of the time. So what else do we have? Religious. Yeah, I'd say temple was the obvious one. I think burial and monument. So that all comes under temple, really, doesn't it? Either you got a temple, which is center of administration, or it's a burial site. Even though it says outpost, it need not be an actual outpost. It could just be an asteroid covered in graves, or a monument in space. Yeah, monastery would be an offshoot of temple. So when we further drill down on that, that's essentially a religious space, a settlement. Yeah, gift shop, that's a good one. We could do like the extreme version of the Hutton mug and put it halfway between the Milky Way and Andromeda. So it takes you literally half a year to go and fetch one. So it's going to need another option. I'd say there was a relatively equal chance of any of those things existing in deep space. I think observatory would come under research facility. But yeah, educational or library, I think they're definitely separate things. I should be avoiding that one like the plague. I quite like the idea of having a library floating between galaxies somewhere. Some ancient alien culture has put it there, far away from the galaxy to keep it safe. That would be weird. So research facility or library. We'll go with keep the same, to be honest. 95% of the time it's going to be a research facility. The other 5% it might be a library. Bearing in mind that the chances of there being anything at all is very, 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 very low, given that we are between galaxies. So this then can be summarized under historic civilization. Some major nesting of comments we're doing here. I think you're right, actually. Yes, thank you. It also says vessel, which it shouldn't do. Outpost. Research system. Research in space. word science there is superfluous. This is getting ridiculous. Like, what I'll do is, because this is insane, I have to do this for all these yet, is I'll collapse these into separate macros and then do it as nested macros essentially, so that we're not putting all this on the same graph, because it's just getting absolutely lunatic-ish. It's a new word that I've just invented specifically for this scenario. Fortunately, we're not doing mixed civilization on this one, so we can just put that in there. Yeah, it doesn't normally look this terrifying. It's just that in this particular instance, there's just a lot of nested data to kind of dig through. Yeah, so it's a big data pool. So I need to find a less stupid way of doing it. Well, what would help is if I didn't use a macro, because the thing with macros is they can't have their own variables, and you can do local data containers within a macro, but they have to be connected via pins. So like this one here is actually the output pin all the way over here. That's what we're outputting, but we then have to set that by following this ridiculously long pin here, wire rather, and then we're assigning values to that, which this picks up. So really a macro is not the best fit for this, so this needs converting to a function. Question is, do I do it now? Would it be better to do it now? Just thinking. So dealing with historic civilization obviously can be its own macro, as can that one. Let's step through the logic a minute. So the first thing we do is we work out what type of sector we're actually dealing with here, because that changes the shape of the data that we're actually generating. Which means this is one isolated option in its entirety. So if that were a macro, can you collapse graphs in this? You can. Makes it a bit less mental. So if I collapse each of those, then that could make it a little less insane. Then, assuming I can do the same here, I need that single output there, really. So you actually need to go connect over here. As crazy as it sounds, I have never actually had to use this before. I've never had blueprints that have been so filled with nodes that I've had to collapse them. Why did that one lose its input pins? That's not very helpful. No. You can use Unreal and publish anywhere. That said, we have had interest from Epic about putting it on the Epic Store, which we'll definitely look at doing. It's awkward because we're kind of deep in the Steam ecosystem with things like achievements and the multiplayer, so we'd have to recreate that for the Epic Store as well. Starting to look a little bit more reasonable. Yeah, so in order to publish on the Epic Store, it's just some changes in the back end, really. In fact, I think the Steam online subsystem is like hard-coded in an INI file, so we just need to sort that out, make sure it's set up to support both. It might be the case that we need to do two separate packages, one for each platform. Feels weird that there's no output pin the string. Why did I type stream? Well, that certainly looks a lot less mental. There we go, that's nice and clean now. Stick that up at the origin point. Yeah, it's C++. There's a couple of things I've had to go and dip into, but for now, at least whilst everything's being prototyped, it's majority of it's just blueprints. Just make sure that this is all as it should be. So we're dealing with an active civilization in intergalactic space. So it's going to be either a vessel or an outpost. So 75% chance it's a vessel, 20% chance it's an outpost, 5% other. And the other is going to be something like a probe, which I also need to do on the other one as well. Yeah, so we've got 5% chance of other. So this needs to be set up for a probe. To be honest, that could probably literally just be set to a probe. Why don't I sneak that in there? So historic, other, system, space. So on the active one, it should literally be identical, other than the fact that everything is active and alive still, rather than historic and dead and gone. Right, so unless I'm mistaken, that should actually be the intergalactic space one finished. Just clean these up. So the other thing I need to do is we need to add a string to this, or rather convert the political state to a string. So it's actually, and it's now the background state rather than the political state. So just tests that I was doing. So this one needs to be a string now. It's background state. It's going to break a couple of things, as you would expect. So first being this. So I did have a nice convenient enum string here, so that's going to be broken. So what it's going to be doing now is it's going to be outputting literally the string onto the UI. So I'm going to have to write just a bit of a translation function for that, so we convert that not very pretty string into something which is a bit more verbose. That is the only place that that's actually used. Go straight in there, there. It's no longer needed. Yes, Anasi. Now that the data structure has been kind of refined a bit, it's going to be quicker to populate the other ones. So we should have the entirety of intergalactic space covered now, which I'm about to test once I've hooked this up. So this one was intergalactic space. Ah, Claire's just brought me in a drink. She is lovely. So Sajay just gets its own special one. And for the rest of them, so that was the Sajay one. I suppose the easiest thing to do here is just to assign some basic text descriptions to these. So that one is no civilization. So you can see the options for the actual galactic sectors, like within the center of the galaxy, are a lot more focused on proper established civilizations. So they'll have very different options compared to the intergalactic space. Special scenario is going to be for anything interesting and probably quite sci-fi that we decide to add. I don't know, something like the Badlands from DS9 would come under a special scenario. So that's going to be a sector which has something weird and spacey in it rather than alien civilizations. That one for now. Okay, that should at least restore sensor functionality. So let's give it a quick whirl and see what we get. Glad you're liking it, Mario. The YouTube feature is it's definitely a crowd pleaser. I'm looking forward to fleshing that out a little bit more. Although that's going to have to wait for now. So as we go through the galaxy, you'll see here that the state will change. It should be a predominantly independent worlds, with the occasional either multi or single factions. So a single faction would be a single organization controlling the whole sector, like a monarchy or an empire, something like that. Independent worlds is each planet is independent, and then multiple factions would be, I suppose, like you have in Star Trek, where you've got the Federation and the Romulans, and the other factions that are independent within themselves. Star Wars universe would count as multi-faction, the Rebels and the Imperials. So we'll have to decide upon the rarity chances, the percentages on some of these things through playtesting. This doesn't feel too bad, just looking at it, because you'd expect most sectors to be just independent worlds, with the occasional Galactic Empire, which does seem to be coming out in the data as I go through. Not seeing much in the way of special sectors though. I saw one, far from Sol, funnily enough. Hi Commander BC5, good to see you. Stream had a bit of a hiccup earlier, but other than that, it seems to be going fine, thank you. Independent worlds means that it's whatever planet has life on it is self-managed and not part of any greater organization. Which means there's no alliances, there's no federations or anything like that. It's literally just scattered independent civilizations. Right. Okay, so let us have a look. So we want to clear that, go to 361,000 meters. That should take us into galactic space. So you can see here now as we go through, it should be predominantly nothing. And the question that that we have to ask ourselves is just how common do we want to come across something in intergalactic space? I mean, it's going to be a star. So you can see most of the time there aren't even any stars, let alone anything else. So we want encountering something in intergalactic space to be extremely rare. Yes, there'll be a lot of civilizations in the galactic disk, not so much beyond. Yes, Anasi. I think there's definitely value in that, because you have things like, it's nice to be able to set the speed to exactly 1 light year, so you can see just how slow 1 light year is. Yeah, just try flying from the sun to Earth. It's crazy at the speed of light. So we set that back to 361,000. Down a bit, we should enter the Galactic Halo. Yeah, it's if you just fly off at the speed of light, exactly 1c, and then look out the back window at the sun kind of trailing away from you, it's just painfully slow. It's definitely going to be very, very rare. Let's try and make it maybe not quite so rare. Right, so from the edge of the halo to 1 million light years. If it's true, we select 1, which is historic. All about the space monsters. So what's happening here is we're constantly coming up false on here, which is setting it to 0, which is no civilization, because of the crazy low percentages. So if we make them not quite so crazy, let's see what kind of frequency we get. Hi Britishness, yes I did, thank you very much. It was Exmoor Gold, to be precise. Where we live here in Somerset, we're literally on the border of Exmoor, so I can actually see Exmoor from my window. So a good local beer. Thank you, Frederick. It is Lofi Geek, I believe. It's in the video description anyway. So I need to fix the fact it's not coming up with any information when you load the game. As soon as you click something, it's fine. But, it's something that needs to be fixed. actually 321,362. So Galactic Halo. As I go up, should go into interstellar space. There we go, intergalactic space rather. So if we move towards the centre of the galaxy, still not seeing anything crop up, which would suggest that the percentage is still too low. Maybe we want it to be rare, but not that rare. See, 1% seems like it would be a lot, but let's try it. Or something. So what do we get there? A scientific research vessel, which is a derelict. Okay. Another historic research vessel. Let's go this way. Still got lucky with those two. What's that? The derelict science vessel. as one of them space libraries. Yes, the planet colours will be coming back, the sensors. The civilian transport that got lost in the distance of space. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good percentage of randomness there, because that's quite a lot of galaxy that I just scrolled across. I only found like 5 objects, so given that this is intergalactic space we're looking at here, I think that's a perfectly acceptable infrequency of discoveries. I did notice, however, that they were mostly historic. I suppose that's because it's a 75% chance of that. Hi Netcore, welcome to the stream. Okay, yeah, I think I'm content with that. I'll leave it at 1% at the border of the Galactic Halo, and then have it as 0.01% all the way out 1 million light years away. And then beyond that, it will there won't be anything. So I would say that is intergalactic space done. So, yeah, if we do Galactic Halo next, the Galactic Halo is practically going to be the same. So we just duplicate. Thank you. Yeah, if you'd seen it earlier, then it was very messy, but I've been sort of keeping it under control. Mainly by just collapsing these, because otherwise it's just an absolute nightmare of nodes, like nodeception. So, Galactic Halo wise, we need slightly more intelligent distances on this one, because we need to know distance from the core laterally, perhaps. So we need to measure the distance on the z-axis. And that's going from 10,000 light years up to, what's the gap? 3261. That's 10,000. That takes us to the edge of the galactic halo. I would say, in terms of debugging, nodes are easier if you have them laid out properly, because you're dealing with what is already a flowchart. I mean, they are just essentially an overblown flowchart, so you can see logic flow really easily. In fact, when the game's running, you can literally see movement along there. You can see the code executing in real time. That is easier to debug than just a page full of code. For logic issues, at least. Probably not an ASCII because of the procedural nature of what we're doing. Each sector is generated in isolation. So, I mean, there's certainly, on a per sector basis, we could have like, a sector has a predisposition towards insectoid races. We could certainly do that, but then the next sector along will have mammals and then back to insectoids again. So per sector, yes, but it would only be per sector. So we need to know if that one is greater than 10,000, then I need to get my head around this. Never talk and do math at the same time. It doesn't work out very well. Right, so if we're over 10,000, then we need to be working from this. So that needs to be a select statement. So is true, otherwise I'm going to measure the distance to the core, which means they need to be around, which means that needs to go there, that needs to go there, that needs to go there, that needs to do that. Well spotted, that should be 10,000. So this one should actually be 50,000. And that should cap at 0.1, which is equal to what we have in intergalactic space. Maybe we'll put that 10%. Same here, 10%. Falling to %. So what we're doing here is, on the select statement, first of all we're checking, are we beyond 10,000 light years on the z-axis? If we are, we know that we are above the galactic plane, in which case we just check the range between the top of the thick disk, which is 10,000 light years, and the edge of the galactic halo, which is 326,000 light years. If we're within the 10,000 light years, so we're not above or below the galactic plane, which would actually not... Oh no, it would be 10,000, yeah. Hang on. No, it wouldn't. It would be 5,000, wouldn't it? I'll need to double check that. Because if the galactic... How thick is the thick disk? The thick disk comprised of fairly old stars is about 5,000 light years thick. I've seen other values for that. So Wikipedia reckons about 16,000 light years, down to about 3 at the edges. So I thought it was 10. So that fits that. The answer of 5,000 came off Reddit. I don't think I'm going to trust Reddit. Yeah, 10,000 seems to be an average enough figure. There are varying figures depending on where you look. That's one of the frustrating things for me with astrophysics and the structure of the galaxy, is that you can never find the same answer twice. Everyone's got a different opinion. They're usually within a ballpark, but there's never any set value, which is quite frustrating when you try to model them. Hi Rapture, I'm just working on distributing life throughout the galaxy at the moment. Is that Domate? I'd like to know how or if you're planning to handle alien empires. Well, funnily enough, that's what I'm doing right now. So, first of all, we're setting a background state per sector within the galaxy. And that's where we decide if there's life, then what's the overall shape of that life? Is it independent worlds? Is it a single empire? Is it a series of smaller factions? So we set that up first as our kind of background stage. And then when we generate the actual races themselves, we're generating it with that information in mind. But yeah, in this case, so a distance of 5,000 light years from the galactic plane would be the edge of the thick disk, and then 50,000 light years is the edge of the galactic disk laterally. Okay. And that gives us our weight for the random Boolean. So quite simply, all we're doing here is we're applying a weight to a true or false. And the complexity of that is working out where we are in the galaxy relative to either the galactic plane or the galactic core. And just measuring the distance to that. Okay, Jim, have a good one. Anasi, yes, there will be space pirates. There's always space pirates. You can't have space without space pirates. Right, so if this is true, we generate some form of life. If it is false, we generate no life, which is this one here. So I think whether or not that life is historic or active, we were weighting it 75% towards historic life out in the intergalactic space. I think within the galactic halo itself, maybe 0.5. Yeah, if we go 50-50 with that, to see what kind of results we get. Again, I'm not going to bother with mixed civilization. So mixed would be some historic dead civilizations and some active ones. For the galactic halo region, there are going to be no real established civilizations out there. And now my cat is stealing my tea from my desk. She's deciding to push the cup all the way across the desk, so I shall put her on. So this one is going to be Halos historic. Active. She does get violently insistent. Like, she'll come on my desk and she's like, right, I'm having your tea. And I'll say, no, please don't drink my tea. And she'll like, test me. Just test me. And I will claw your eyes out. Ah, I see you found Steve. Yeah, Pip will definitely be on the ship somewhere at some point. Still waiting for the cat plugin that I want to get to come on sale. It's I think it's £120. It's extremely good. I mean, it's very, very well motion captured and everything, but I can't quite justify £120 on a cat. So when it's on sale, I will pick that up. Right, so Halo historical. Do we need to change any of this? So I think I'll stick with the same. So we've got 75% vessels, 20% outposts, 5% other, which is probes. I think these distributions are fine as well. Actually saying that, of course, no, it's science. So yes, mostly science with some civilian, some religious. That's fine. Mostly colony ships. Yep, that's fine. So the output strings here are fine to be left as is, because the detail with this is defined when we actually start building properly, and we'll run a further check against what section of the galaxy we're in. So I don't need to tell it here that it's in the Halo, because we'll know that separately. So I would say, rather nicely, that that is also done. Let's give that a whirl and see what we get. Sadly, I don't think the plugin has a black and white cat. So we set that to 5,000. So that's the thick disk, and then we've got one more. Okay, so I must have set this one to 10,000. Error. So we've got active research vessel in the Galactic Halo. What's that one? Active research vessel. A dead research vessel. Active one. Other one. Library outpost. Research vessel. Dead colony ship. Another library. And a temple. I think it's our first temple ship. Okay, so these are a lot more common. So as we work our way up towards the edge of the halo region, we should start seeing less and less and less stuff. So one thing to bear in mind here with the distances between objects. So if we find another object, so that one and that one, those two objects are 100 light years apart. The next one, 2,000 light years. So that's 2,900 light years between those two objects. So even though it looks like they're coming up quite frequently, that is only one object per sector. Each sector being 100 light years wide. They are quite well dispersed. Yeah, Steve still gets me sometimes as well. Like, I know he's there, but he'll still get me. Right then, so that's that one. The next one is technically the more interesting one, because that's the actual proper bulk of the galaxy. It's this one, so that's open clusters and central bulge. Okay, Garzini, have a good one. Thanks for joining the stream. All of that should be relating to the main sectors. That's a bit, isn't it? This is starting to look much more sensible now. Those ones I'll probably do. There's open clusters, given that they're star birthing regions, there's going to be no established civilizations there because they won't have been around long enough. So I take that one, use that for that. So with the open clusters and the central bulge, I think you're looking predominantly at research vessels in those locations. Yes, this is determining NPC ships because I mentioned it earlier in the stream, but we have a chicken and egg scenario where we can't generate the contents of a star system, which includes its life and its ships and things, before we get there, because otherwise we'd have to generate all of them in a sector, and that's crazy. So much data, it would lag the game to hell trying to generate that much data at once, not to mention use up all the RAM. So we have to cherry pick certain bits of data to make sure we only generate what we need when we need it. In this case, what we need is the ability to see alien ships from afar, which means we need to generate those civilizations before we generate the procedural systems themselves, which means we have two classes of procedural system. We have the advanced FTL capable procedural systems, which are where the alien races live, and this will be what defines how many of those there are. And then the second class of procedural system, which is life generated based on the rules. So for the FTL civilizations, the planet that they live on will be shaped around them as a civilization, whereas for non-FTL civilizations it will work the other way around, where they will be shaped by the environment. So we have that cut-off between FTL capable and then not. Yeah, so ships will be able to spawn anywhere within the sector far outside of their home system because we already know that home system exists. So we have control in the generation as to how many star systems there will even be with an FTL capable civilization on them within any given sector. So for our main sector, may need to further refine, like whether or not this is like in the Galactic arms. Yeah, so each race will have its own, well, not each race, but races within the galaxy will have differing forms of FTL travel. And because the galaxy is simulated in real time, it means that we can move the ship across the galaxy any which way we choose to. So obviously the UN technology is warp, so that's just typical Alcubierre drives. But something like hyperspace, we can simply place the ship in a different reference frame, where one unit in that reference frame is say 10 or 100 units in normal space, and we could have multiple layers of hyperspace with different unit conversion rates, or we can have things like wormholes or jump gates. Because the galaxy generates based on the ship's coordinates, all we need to do is move the ship and the galaxy regenerates around it automatically. So things like wormholes are really, really simple to implement. Yeah, that's the long-term plan. So you'll be able to retrofit your ship with their technology. So if you want to use hyperspace instead of warp, then you can do that instead. That will just mean removing the FTL tech that you have and installing the aliens tech instead. For procedural races, yes. Things like wormholes can have any exit point anywhere in the galaxy. But for procedurally generated aliens that use jump gates, that will only be within that 50 light year radius within that sector. For the manually handcrafted alien races, they can go anywhere in the galaxy by virtue of the fact that they're handcrafted. As a general rule of thumb, if an alien race is a procedural race, then all the things that they do will take place within that 100 light year cube, because that's where they're generated, and the game only knows about them if that cube is loaded. I suppose it's a bit like Minecraft and its chunk loaders. So in Minecraft, if anyone's not familiar, there are things called chunk loaders which keep a chunk loaded in memory so that things like fire spread and various other bits and pieces happen and continue to happen within that chunk. Otherwise, when you get too far away from that chunk, it's unloaded from memory and things stop happening. So without that chunk loader, it goes static, it goes idle. And the same is true with this. So when you're not in a sector, it's unloaded and the game doesn't think about it until you go back there. Yeah, if you were to somehow drag an alien vessel too far from their home sector, then as soon as that sector is unloaded, that vessel will disappear. That's correct, yes. Yeah, the world is always centered on the ship. Get this wrong. This is one downside to using blueprints, is that when you're dealing with a lot of the same data type, the wires do tend to get muddled. It's generally only an issue in macros. So that byte has to go there. That would be that plus that goes into there, and the maximum would be that. Right, so our base chance is the maximum there, and that also becomes the minimum there. We then add that becomes the maximum there, which therefore becomes the minimum there. And then we add that one, which goes there, and that was just there for reference. Okay, so that should work. Right, and that should give us our 4-byte random percentage. So all we're doing here is we're picking a random integer between 0 and 100, and then we're just seeing whether or not our choices are within a numerical range. So obviously 0 to 50 would be 50%, and that just outputs as a byte. Which means I can replace all of that with this. So we don't need that anymore. We do, however, need our percentages. So 70% would be a value then 20% 2, then 9% 3, and then a further 1% for 4. That should be our 100%, 70, 80, 90, 100, yeah, that will add up to 100. Which means all we need to do is give that the random stream. Then we can literally just delete all of this completely. Use the macro instead, which is much cleaner and much nicer. Gives us our random enum. If you're on the development build, Grimlock, things aren't quite bedded in yet with the Galaxy, so that's probably why. If you're not on the dev build, then that's a mystery. If you type in manual coordinates for 000, that will get you there. Thank you, Harry. That's appreciated. Claire's always accusing me of putting people to sleep, so I'm doing my part. See, I'm thinking with this, I'm thinking that no civilization at all needs to be an option for just generally across the galaxy. Otherwise, every single sector, other than the special ones, is going to have some form of FTL capable life, which is perhaps a little bit extreme. So we do need some dead zones. Yep, it's almost 11:15 p.m. here in the UK. I have been streaming for over 3 hours now, so I will call it a day shortly. If you mean, is it quicker to put together, Christoph, then yes, sometimes it can be. For prototyping systems, blueprints are great, just for throwing things together and just rapidly prototyping on a system. If you mean in terms of execution, C++ is always quicker. Like, considerably quicker if you're doing anything that's real time. Gonna do it. Let's add a 5-byte random output, which means we need to duplicate that. what I'm essentially doing with these macros is giving us a weighted random for enums. So the maximum there becomes the minimum there, and then that plus that gives us a maximum there, which means that goes into there, that goes into there. So recreate that one. There. Just leave that one blank. That's just for note keeping. Nothing else. Just thinking of this. It's probably worth me just sticking in some execution pins for all the different options. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, the reason for doing this is I can just do some slightly different things depending on the region. Like the inter-arm regions should have slightly less civilization than the arm regions, which are generally a lot more metal rich. So, bulge, edge, thin disk. Globular cluster might be one I have to handle separately as well. So I'll deal with it in here for now. So I think the easiest way to do this, let's stick with my 4 bytes for that and don't use that one. That's just 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. do random bubble with from stream. So if we do, yeah, see, these are all going to need slightly separate percentages. This is totally doable. So 1, 2, 4, this is going to define essentially the chance of there not being anything civilization wise, just with a random weighting. So if the value is true, we have something, and then we go and work out what that something is. If the value is false, then we have nothing, and we return as such. False would go up here to this one. So all of those can go up there into the false, and that simply returns no civilization. So all that's left to do is to decide on the percentages. So if we say that Galactic Bulge, the edge of it isn't too bad, so yeah, stick with 50% on that one. Thin disk, to be honest, is a spiral arm, so that one can forget about that. So that one's going to be, I would say, 95% populated. Inter ARM, maybe go down to 0.75% populated. Thick disk transition, about the same as an inter ARM, really. Thick disk itself, go for 0.5. Popular clusters. Any life there is going to be very, very old. Let's go to 0.25. Again, all of these percentages we will tweak and refine through gameplay. These are just the initial values, just to see kind of what we're playing with. Let's just give that a try and see. Harry, yeah, Space Station 13 is, rather embarrassingly, a game that I'd never heard of until like a month ago, when someone mentioned it to me. And I actually thought it was a new game that had just been released. I didn't realise it's like really, really old now. And for some reason, it's completely escaped me. Never played it. So it is something I'll check out. So we should start to see, yeah, so instances of no civilization now in some of these sectors. As we move into the Arm region, the instance of no civilization should get higher. Essentially, the model we want for the galaxy is that the spiral arms need to be sort of bustling with younger races, new star birth, young races, technology, kind of ballpark what humanity has, give or take a few thousand years. Whereas in the inter-arm regions, which have much older stars, there's going to be a greater percentage of failed civilizations that didn't make it past the Great Filter, and much older civilizations, obviously, because there's much older stars there. Definitely a lot of stuff going on around the Earth area, which is nice. You might also notice, by the way, that I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this, but because of the new way that we're generating the state data for the galactic sectors, it's calculating the number of objects and the class of the objects without actually generating the objects on the GPS mode, which means I can literally murder my mouse button and you'll see there's absolutely no lag whatsoever, because it's not going through the massive task of actually generating any data for those stars. So even in the galactic core, there's no lag whatsoever. Just to demonstrate the point. So I can go on the mouse, loads and loads and loads, and you can see that there's absolutely no slowdown on that whatsoever, which is absolutely awesome. We have nothing in the galactic core at all. Funny, actually, you can see a little blip when we get to the galactic core, because that's not using the new system. Yeah, anyway, that pleases me. Optimization always pleases me. Also interesting to see the volume increase of stars in that area. Okay, well, I am slowly losing my voice, so I'm going to go ahead and call it there. And as is per my plan, I will get this put out as a build in the next half an hour or so. It takes about 6 minutes to do the build, and then about 20 minutes to go and write everything I need to write up for it. So if you keep an eye on Steam, you should see a new development build going out within the hour. See if I can get it done before midnight. So with that, thank you everyone for watching the stream, and I will continue cracking on with this, and be sure to tune in for the next stream on Sunday, because it's Wednesday today, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yeah, shed update as well. Yeah. Actually, on the note of the shed fund on YouTube, I'm having to jump through like hoop after hoop after hoop that YouTube AdSense keeps throwing at me to get everything verified before they'll allow monetization buttons. I've jumped through 2 of their hoops now, and there's only 1 hoop remaining, so hopefully monetization will be back for the next stream. Fingers crossed anyway, assuming they get on with it. Okay, so with that, I shall wish you all a good night, and I shall see you on Sunday. Bye for now.